Welcome to Know Before You Go. My name is Father Brian Walker, and this is for the 29th Sunday in Ordinary Time. How important is prayer in your life? I ask that because so many people come up and ask me, how do you pray? It's not always an easy thing to do because most people don't know where to start. Prayer is a conversation that one has with God, and it truly is a conversation. It's not just one sided, it's not just speaking and getting nothing back. But some people don't know where to look for the signs of a conversation. Many think that it is a monologue. I'm just talking to myself. They talk and nothing comes back. That's not prayer. And that's not why that's not a good reason for prayer to be called that. Prayer is something totally different. When we were young, as children in our early years of formation, especially as a Christian, we prayed our prayers, and sometimes we just said them to memorize them, or we said them because we were asked to. We learned a lot of prayers because they were taught to us. And we thought that this was the only way to pray. But as we grew, we realized that our experiences and reflections were directly from our prayers, and that the things that we said came back to us in so many different ways. This was the beginning of our true prayer life. Unfortunately, what has happened is that we continue to grow and we have drifted away from these conversations with God. And we have been wrapped up in the cares and troubles of the world, and we have become preoccupied with these. We find ourselves no longer talking to God, nor listening to the responses that come from the prayer. We need to get back to talking to God. We find that when we have these conversations with God, we are not as confused. We find that the things that are a little clearer to us because of the prayer. In the gospel passage for today, we hear how Jesus speaks of not giving up. He explains to his disciples that we don't give up on something that we truly believe in. He uses the example of the judge, which is supposed to be the best example of justice. But even here, we find a judge that just doesn't care. But we are not supposed to give up in the face of injustice. We have to be willing to go further if it is truly what we believe in. We must fight for what is right. I live in Chicago, and one of the big news items here is the face of the immigrant. We have constantly heard about the number of migrants coming to our country and walking to the border. But we are also hearing about the number of people being put on buses and planes and being shipped to places like Chicago and New York. Some people have been angry about this, but others have tried to humanize the situation by putting a face on the immigrant and speaking of specific cases of where people are recognized as people. They realize that we have to do what we can to bring out a face to all of this instead of just making them some faceless illegals. It's a way of showing society that all we have to do is open our eyes and do what we can to help one another. All of this is to show that we must be consistent if we are to really make a difference in our lives or the lives of our families or society in general. We can't give up. So when people ask about praying, I don't say start off with the rosary, but I ask them to start off small and build up. When you run a marathon, you don't start off running 26 miles, but sometimes it's just making it to the end of the block and back. Prayer can be a challenge, but it can also be rewarding. Just don't give up. Take the time to build up a relationship with God and yourself. Let the relationship truly be built up. Each day, it becomes easier and easier. It is a challenge to remain faithful, but in the end, it can be so fulfilling.